At 13:29 hours, a drone launched from Iran's southern coast and turned directly toward the USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier with 5,700 Americans on board. While Iranian operators thought this was another boring mission to capture some footage to turn it into a propaganda video, this would all change in a matter of seconds. Unknown to Tehran, an F-35C stealth fighter from Main Fighter Attack Squadron 314, the Black Knights, was already vectoring onto an intercept course from behind and above. No radar, no radio calls, no emissions of any kind. The F-35 had been on combat patrol 30 miles east when the strike group vectored it toward the contact, and the pilot didn't accelerate or light up a single sensor. The approach would be entirely passive, because the F-35 had something the Shahed-139 had no way to detect or counter, and it only worked if the Iranians never knew it was there. The F-35's distributed aperture system, 6 infrared cameras mounted flush around the airframe, stitches together a seamless 360-degree thermal picture and projects it directly into the pilot's helmet visor. These cameras detect heat passively, meaning the F-35 sees a target the way a security camera sees a burglar in the dark, without turning on a light or making a sound. To the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, operators watching the satellite feedback in Iran, their screen showed a perfectly routine reconnaissance flight. Open sky, calm seas, the carrier formation growing slowly in the frame. They had no idea a stealth fighter had parked behind their drone like a highway patrol car sitting in the median. And every second they didn't know, the F-35's passive sensors were quietly cataloging everything. Every frequency the drone's satellite link transmitted on, every command protocol its controller used, every electronic emission its sensor package radiated. The satellite uplink alone was gold. Once you know the frequency, the modulation, and the encryption handshake, you just don't track one drone. You track every drone in the fleet that uses the same data link architecture. Iran had sent a drone to spy on the carrier. The carrier had sent something much worse to spy on the drone. By 1334, the pilot was close enough for the F-35's electro-optical targeting system, a high-resolution infrared and optical camera housed under the nose, to resolve the drone in detail. Now the strike group finally had what the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at 25,000 feet couldn't provide from 50 miles out: a close-up look at those hardpoints. The report went back to the carrier. Shahed-139 confirmed. Hardpoint configuration ambiguous. Possible missile rails, but no positive weapon identification. That answer made the commander's problem harder, not easier. The Shahed-139 isn't one of Iran's disposable Shahed-136 kamikaze drones. It's their best attempt at building a Predator, a full-size reconnaissance platform with a 2,000-kilometer range launched from deep inside Iran, where the operators were completely untouchable. Its hardpoints could carry up to 4 guided missiles, or camera pods, or sensor packages. A confirmed weapons load would have simplified everything. Armed drone inbound, shoot it down, end of discussion. An empty airframe would have simplified it too. Surveillance flight, keep collecting, let it go. What the pilot was describing was the gray zone between the two, and the drone was advancing a football field closer every second the Navy hesitated to shoot it down. Meanwhile, the Hawkeye's track had pushed through the cooperative engagement capability, the network that connects every ship and aircraft into strike group into one shared tactical picture. So when one sensor sees a target, every weapon system in the formation can engage it. 3 Arleigh destroyers escorting the Lincoln locked fire control solutions automatically on a propeller drone doing the speed of highway traffic. These are ships designed to intercept ballistic missiles at Mach 8. Pointing them at a Shahed-139 was like aiming a fire hose at a birthday candle. But the computers don't care about proportionality. They just solve equations and wait. The firepower was ready. The decision wasn't. Iran has every legal right to fly in international airspace. Nuclear talks were scheduled 3 days from now. Shooting down a surveillance drone before negotiations would hand Tehran exactly the grievance it wanted: a propaganda windfall and a reason to walk away from the table with the moral high ground. Not shooting it down meant Iranian cameras were getting sharper imagery of the carrier with every kilometer it closed. And somewhere between those two options was the narrow space where the commander had to make a call that would either protect his ship or hand a geopolitical gift to Iran 3 days before the most sensitive diplomatic talk of the year. The last time the Navy faced this exact dilemma, the USS Harry S. Truman in 2016. A Shahed-121 buzzed the flight deck and the Navy let it go. Iran bragged for months that they could surveil the American fleet whenever they felt like it. The IRGC posted the footage on state media like a trophy reel. The fallout from that decision has echoed through CENTCOM for a decade. this commander wasn't about to write the sequel. Now the clock was running in two directions. Every second the F-35 shadowed the Shahed-139, its passive sensors built a more complete electronic profile. Satellite frequencies, encryption patterns, command protocols. That data would let the entire U.S. fleet identify and track every Shahed-139 Iran put in the sky for years. Shooting early wasted collection time on an intelligence gold mine. But every second he waited, the drone closed another 42 meters toward nearly 6,000 American lives. At current speed, the Shahed-139 would cross the resolution threshold in under 4 minutes. After that, every frame Iran captured would be operationally useful. Flight deck layouts, aircraft positions, defensive configurations, the kind of imagery you build strike packages around. The F-35 had been collecting for nearly 5 minutes at this point. More than enough to build a comprehensive electronic fingerprint the U.S. intelligence would spend months exploiting. He could continue waiting to find out if it was hostile or not. They might never know until a weapon had left the rails. On top of this, the Truman precedent ended with a drone overflying the carrier and Iran holding the propaganda win. This commander chose a different ending. Authorization went down the chain of command and crossed the tactical net in 2 words: weapons free. The F-35 pilot didn't need to maneuver, didn't need to lock a radar. The AIM-9X Block 2 Sidewinder's imaging infrared seeker had been staring at the Shahed-139's heat signature for minutes. The engine exhaust, the warm wings, the propeller disc glowing against cold ocean air. One trigger squeeze and the missile came off the rail at just under Mach 3. The seeker, designed to lock maneuvering fighters pulling 9 Gs and pick them out from decoy flares, background clutter, even the sun, found a propeller drone flying in a straight line with no countermeasures, no jammer, and no ability to maneuver. Sending a Sidewinder after a Shahed-139 is like sending a cheetah after a house cat. The outcome was never in question. In Tehran, the satellite feed cut to static mid-frame. One moment, the carrier was growing in the frame. The next, nothing. Tasnim news agency would later claim they lost contact during a routine surveillance mission. They didn't mention the Sidewinder receipt or the 5-minute intelligence donation they never agreed to. But as U.S. intelligence began decrypting the Shahed-139 satellite uplink data, they found something the IRGC never intended to transmit. Embedded in the drone's command protocols were coordination timestamps, synchronized to the minute with a second operation already underway 500 miles away. Iran hadn't sent a drone to spy on the carrier. They'd sent it to distract the carrier, and the F-35 had just stolen the proof. At 13:38 hours, minutes after the Sidewinder turned the Shahed-139 into falling debris, 6 fast attack contacts appeared on the Stena Imperative's bridge radar. Inbound at 40 knots from the Iranian coast, the tanker was 3 miles into the Strait of Hormuz, and at 15 knots, she had 24 minutes of exposure before reaching open water. The IRGC needed less than 15. At 13:39, bridge lockouts confirmed the worst version. 6 fast attack craft in a V formation, low-slung fiberglass hulls built for one thing: bow-mounted 50 caliber machine guns with belts loaded and boarding equipment staged on the nearest deck. Grappling hooks, ladders, armed men in tactical vests. Behind them, the Mohair surveillance drone circled at 5,000 feet, streaming everything into an IRGC command center that expected this wrapped up in 15 minutes in time for the evening news cycle. At 13:40, the lead boat crossed the tanker's bow at 300 meters. A second ran down the port side close enough for the crew to see the gun team crouch behind the 50 cal. The remaining 4 fanned into a rotating box, sealing every heading. Then the radio call. Accented English, no preamble. Stena Imperative, stop your vessel immediately. Prepare to be boarded. The IRGC had done this before. They seized the Stena Impero in 2019. Same shipping company, same water, and held the crew for 71 days while the world issued statements and did nothing useful. They grabbed the Advantage Suite, the Niobe, the St. Nicholas, same formula every time. Surround, board, present a hostage crisis that takes months to unwind. But the formula depended on one thing: finishing before anyone with real firepower showed up. At 13:41, the Stena Imperative's captain did 2 things that merchant captains in piracy zones are trained to do. He pushed to full power and he fought back. Fire hoses, pressurized to 120 psi, capable of knocking a man off his feet at 30 meters, went over the sides. Crew members directing the streams at any boat that tried to come alongside. The helmsman threw the rudder hard to port, then starboard, creating a churning wake that turned the approach into a rodeo for any boat crew trying to hold steady long enough to throw a grappling hook. At the same time, the captain keyed Channel 16. Mayday, 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 Stena Imperative, Strait of Hormuz, 6 military vessels attempting to board, requesting immediate assistance. 15 knots against boats that could do 50. Running wasn't an escape plan. It was a way to keep the ship moving while praying someone was close enough to hear that call. At 13:43, the IRGC boats tightened the circle. An Iranian crewman on the lead boat hurled a grappling hook toward the Stena Imperative's deck rail. It bounced off the hull and splashed into the churning wake as the tanker heeled through another evasive turn. A second boat tried to come alongside the port quarter and caught a fire hose stream directly into the wheelhouse at close range. The boat sheared off, circled, and came back. These crews had done this before, and a fire hose wasn't going to stop them, but it was buying time. The question was how much time the tanker had left to buy. The IRGC needed maybe 5 more minutes to get a boarding team over the rail. The tanker's crew needed someone with a bigger stick to show up faster than that. The IRGC's timing was calculated, not reckless. The Lincoln had spent the morning dealing with a drone now scattered across the Arabian Sea. A Super Hornet at full afterburner needs close to an hour to cover 500 miles, and the IRGC needed less than 15 minutes. By the time carrier aircraft arrived, the tanker could be under Iranian control, and Tehran would have an American-crewed vessel as leverage for nuclear talks scheduled 3 days later. The logic was sound, but only if the aircraft carrier was the only American asset within range. It wasn't. At 13:44, the guided missile destroyer USS McFaul went to flank speed from 12 nautical miles southeast. She was there because the Navy learned from the Stena Imperative humiliation in 2019. After that seizure, CENTCOM started rotating destroyers into the strait independent of whatever the nearest carrier was doing, specifically so the next attempt boarding would meet a warship instead of a press release. The McFaul had been shadowing every friendly merchant she could for weeks. At plus 30 knots, she was roughly 20 minutes from the tanker. And at the 12-mile mark, already well within range of her MK-45 5-inch gun, which fires a 70-pound guided projectile every 3.75 seconds at targets up to 13 nautical miles out. The McFaul you see here had been able to hit these boats for several minutes before she started moving. The reason she hadn't was strategic. Turning 6 IRGC boats into floating debris would hand Tehran exactly the confrontation it wanted. An excuse to close the strait and spike oil to $200 a barrel. Letting the boats run home empty accomplished more than a 5-inch gun ever could. But that required the boats to actually decide to run. At 13:45, Channel 16, the same frequency the tanker's Mayday had gone out on, the frequency every vessel in the strait monitors, crackled with a new voice. American English, no hesitation. IRGC vessels harassing the merchant shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. This is United States Navy warship. You are conducting hostile action against a vessel under U.S. Navy escort. Break off immediately and return to port. On the Stena Imperative's bridge, the captain heard that transmission and knew what it meant. So did his crew. They kept the hoses going and the rudder swinging, but for the first time in 7 minutes, the math had changed. On the IRGC boats, the commanders heard it too. The question was whether they believed it, whether there was actually an American warship close enough to matter, or whether this was a bluff from a destroyer hours away trying to buy time. At 13:46, the horizon answered the question for them. The McFaul cleared into view, nearly 9,000 tons of American diplomacy cutting through the strait at flank speed, bow wave throwing white water 20 feet high, and the MK-45 5-inch gun barrel visibly trained in the direction of the IRGC formation. Above the formation, contrails from F-15E Strike Eagles out of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, 300 to 350 miles away, carved white lines across the sky at 20,000 feet. Sniper targeting pods already locked on the boats below. The IRGC had built their entire operation around the idea that distracting one aircraft carrier would leave the strait uncovered. They were now staring at the proof that it hadn't. The boarding attempts stopped, but the boats kept circling, too proud or too confused to break off, not brave enough to keep going with a 5-inch naval gun closing from the southeast and strike fighters stacked overhead. The McFaul's MK-38 chain guns, 25mm automatic cannons on stabilized mounts that can chew through fiberglass hulls the way a belt sander goes through plywood, tracked the nearest boat with the smooth mechanical patience of a weapons system that doesn't blink. Channel 16 crackled again. IRGC vessels, this is Coalition Warship 7-4. You have been warned. Break off now. The IRGC boat commanders could now see, with their own eyes, what their mission briefing had promised wouldn't be there. Their 50 caliber machine guns were designed for tanker bridge windows and unarmed merchant crews. Against the hull of a destroyer, A 50 cal round leaves a scratch that a junior sailor buffs out with a paint roller during an afternoon. Their Mohajer drone had been circling with authority for 8 minutes and was now sharing airspace with F-15Es, whose pilots had spent 2 years shooting down Iranian-built drones over the Red Sea. The boarding ladders were still on deck because a tanker captain with fire hoses and a rudder had made sure they stayed there. And closing fast from the south was a destroyer whose 5-inch guns put 16 rounds per minute onto speedboat-sized targets at ranges the 50 cal can't even dream of reaching. At 13:49, the lead boat broke formation and opened throttle toward the Iranian coast. 3 followed immediately. Engines screaming at power settings these crews had probably never touched outside of training. The last 2 peeled off seconds later, and the disciplined V formation that had looked so formidable 11 minutes earlier scattered into 6 separate wakes, all pointed at Iran. The Mohajer drone dutifully recorded the whole retreat for an IRGC command center that had expected very different footage. The McFaul escorted the Stena Imperative through the remainder of the strait, crew safe, cargo intact. 1/5 of the world's oil still flowing through the choke point as if the Iranians had never left port. If you enjoyed this video, we think you'll love this other video on screen. Bye for now.